Welcome. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, everyone. It is a pleasure to see you today. And thank you so much for having joined us at yet another seminar of ours. Today, we have two very interesting presentations because we always have interesting presentations, to be fair. And I'd like to remind you that we have simultaneous interpretation provided today. Our amazing interpreters, Anastasia and Jan, are working with us today. I'd like to thank our partners, the departments, Indiana University, as well as the Academic Alliance Big Ten, for supporting our scholars, our researchers during such hard times for Ukraine and for all our scholars. It is a pleasure to present our first speaker, Andrii Kysliuk. Andrii Kysliuk is a postgraduate student of the Department of Musicology, Folklore, and Ethnology at the Institute of Art History, Folklore, and Ethnology of the National Academy of Science of Ukraine, specializing in cultural studies. His research interests cover Ukrainian piano music, musical biography, minimalism in music, as well as microtonal music. Aside from that, Andrii is also a professional concert pianist, sound engineer, and music theorist. And today, he will present a very interesting topic titled Ukrainian Music Born by the War. Andrii, over to you. Good afternoon, dear colleagues and friends. First and foremost, I would like to sincerely thank Indiana University, our American colleagues, and especially Professor Sarah Phillips for your long-standing and unwavering support of Ukraine and Ukrainian scholars, as well as for the opportunity to present my project titled Ukrainian Music Born by the War. It explores contemporary, classical, or more precisely academic music created by Ukrainian composers during the years of war, inspired by and responding to the ongoing war for Ukraine's independence. Let me share my presentation. Can you see my screen?
Так, все видно.
Yes, we all can see it. Okay. I am a postgraduate student, and I'm just beginning my journey as a researcher. At first glance, it may seem that the topic of my thesis, the creative figure of Mikhailo Borisovich Stepanenko in the Ukrainian musical and cultural process of the second half of the 20th, early 21st centuries, is not directly related to the topic of this project, but in fact, it was the work on this thesis done during explosions and air raid alarms that pushed me to collect material and tell the world about the academic music of modern Ukrainian composers. The world has developed a strong opinion about the high level of Russian academic music, while Ukrainian music was often silenced, or the nationality of the composers was left unmentioned. In many cases, the composers were simply destroyed. In this way, Russian culture was built and asserted at the expense of many names of Ukrainian origin, starting from the 17th century. Mikhailo Stepanenko, talented pianist, composer, and historian of Ukrainian piano music of the pre-Lysenko period, worked through piles of archival material from the Russian Empire. And thanks to his effort, he managed to recover and return the names and works of many outstanding Ukrainian musicians and composers of the 17th through 19th century. Maxim Berezovsky and Metro Bortnyansky could not be erased from music history, though the Ukrainian origin from Klyuchiv could be hidden, and they could be presented as Russians. Then what do we know about brilliant Ukrainian composers and musicians like banjorist and lutenist Timofey Bilohradsky and his daughter, harpsichordist Elizaveta Bilohradska, violinist Ivan Handoshkin or Handoshko, pianists Husakovsky, Vasil Chertovsky, and Timofey Shpakovsky, musicians once applauded by entire Europe. Let me mention just one example. Mikhailo Stepanenko, in the 21st century, discovered in the archives of St. Petersburg a sonata in G minor for solo violin, composed in the 18th century by the Ukrainian composer and violinist Ivan Handoshko. It was dedicated to the death of his contemporary, a descendant of the Ukrainian nobility, Vasil Mirovich, who fought for the restoration of Ukrainian statehood and was executed by the order of Catherine II. Both were doomed to oblivion by the Russian Empire. But we must restore historical justice. This made me realize that preserving the memory of the struggle for freedom and of its heroes for the world and for the coming generations is possible only through highly artistic pieces. Every nation has musical works that serve as a memory of both heroic and tragic events, touching on deep human values, such as the song written by American country singer Toby Keith after the terrorist attack in New York on September 11, 2001, titled Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, the Angry American. This piece became famous globally. Academic music written and performed in Ukraine during the full-scale war is evidence of the heroism of the Ukrainian people in their struggle for freedom and statehood. This music is rooted in high art that supports the fighting spirit. Music born of war must be collected and preserved for the future generations as a phenomenon of the creative search of people fighting for freedom. I gathered information about new works by Ukrainian composers related to Russia's criminal war against Ukraine, about the heroism and suffering of the Ukrainian people, presented at concerts, festivals, and tours by Ukrainian musicians during the full-scale war. This information came from various websites, press reports, and reviews. I organized the material by authorship, creation date, and premiere date, taking into account concert performances, and noted musical genre, content, and form. Musicological studies of modern classical music during the war are also beginning to emerge. I would like to mention the following. Marta Kuzi's study, titled Musicians and Their Creativity During the War, supported by the Institute for Cultural Strategy. This research presents the results of a 2024 survey of 100 Ukrainian classical musicians about their views on creativity in the context of the Russian-Ukrainian war. And another example is Marina Hordienko's research titled Classics During the War, the Ukrainian music scene from 2022, published in the journal Kritika in December 2024. It analyzes the classical concert programs of the National Philharmonic of Ukraine, the National House of Music in Kiev, and the Miroslav Skorik Lviv National Philharmonic over two concert seasons, 2020-2021 and 2023 through 2024. What is the meaning of modern academic musical works about the war of independence for Ukraine and for the world? Well, for Ukraine, these pieces preserve the memory of the ongoing war for independence, honoring the heroes and victims for future generations of Ukrainians. And they are strengthening the spirit of those who are fighting now. For the world, this becomes a powerful tool of cultural diplomacy. Music conveys the reality of Russia's genocidal war against Ukraine through the language of art, a language that is easy to understand even to those people who are far removed from the war. To convey the message embedded in the works of modern Ukrainian composers to the widest possible audience, strong financial and media partnerships are essential. Without such support, a piece can remain unseen and unheard for years. As Zoltan Almashi once said, Ukrainian orchestras do not commission music from modern composers. However, despite the war, Ukraine has a fortunate exception, the Lviv Organ Hall and its directors, Ivana Stepovich and Taras Demko. Under their leadership, the hall has been revitalized and has become a true center of modern Ukrainian culture. Music commissioned by the Lviv Organ Hall includes works by Zoltan Almashi, Oleg Bezborodko, Alexander Shetinsky, Bogdan Frolyak, Alexander Rodin, and others. Also, the hall actively supports young composers, providing them with a platform to perform and record their music. With the start of the full-scale war, musicians of the Luhansk Philharmonic Orchestra were evacuated from Severodonetsk to Lviv. The organ hall began commissioning new works specifically for them. In 2022, Lacrimosa by Alexander Shetinsky saw the world. In 2023, Symphony No. 3, Victorious by Zoltan Almashi. In 2024, Symphony of Indestructibility by Oleg Bezborodko and a symphony by Dmitro Malay. In 2025, a symphony by Serhiy Pilutikov titled She Who Dances with the Wind. And these premieres are professionally recorded and made accessible to listeners around the world via the Ukrainian Live Classic platform, the world's first mobile app dedicated to Ukrainian classical music. It also serves as a media platform with articles about composers and their works. The Ukrainian Live Classic YouTube channel hosts high-quality recordings of Ukrainian music and performers. A true ambassador of support for Ukraine has become the Ukrainian Freedom Orchestra, founded in 2022 by Canadian conductor Carolyn Wilson, with the support of the Metropolitan Opera and the Polish National Opera. Its members include Ukrainian musicians who left Ukraine due to the Russian invasion. From the very beginning, the Ukrainian Freedom Orchestra has positioned itself as a cultural symbol of resistance. Carolyn Wilson, who is married to Peter Galb, General Director of the Metropolitan Opera in New York, continues to support Ukraine's struggle in the cultural domain. Her ancestors emigrated from Chernivtsi to Winnipeg in Canada a century ago, said the following in an interview. I could not pick up a weapon, but I could pick up a baton. It is my weapon. This orchestra is special to me. They are my soldiers of music. Culture is our soul, she says. It's what gives Ukrainians their identity. We have to maintain and expand that. I receive letters from soldiers on the front line saying thank you for your support. Soldiers come to our concerts. They watch us on YouTube and social media. We have performed for soldiers in rehab, and we were overwhelmed by their support. Since 2022, the Ukrainian Freedom Orchestra has toured Europe and North America annually. In August 2025, as part of the orchestra's fourth summer tour of European cities, the premiere of a powerful new piece by renowned Ukrainian composer Maxim Kolomyets took place. Suite from the opera Mothers of Her Son, a moving tribute to the Ukrainian women who traveled 3,000 kilometers behind enemy's lines to rescue their children, who had been forcibly taken and held by Russian authorities. This 15-minute suite is part of a new full-length opera by Maxim Kolomyets, who is a composer, and George Brandt, librettist, jointly commissioned by the Metropolitan Opera in New York and the Polish National Opera in Warsaw. Further information about the project can be found on the official website of both opera houses. In 2025, the Ukrainian Freedom Orchestra held concerts from August 14 to 29 in countries that have demonstrated unwavering support for Ukraine. including Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Romania, Switzerland, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom. The concert program featured works by Ukrainian composers, including Mothers of Kherson by Maxim Kolomyets, Bucha, Lacrimosa by Victoria Poliva. This represents a powerful act of solidarity through culture. The quotes from Peter Galp, Carolyn Wilson, and Maxim Kolomyets shown on the slide speak for themselves. Modern academic orchestral music by Ukrainian composers created in response to the war for independence of Ukraine in genres such as symphony, opera, cantata, concerto, and more can be generally described as classical or academic music. These are primarily programmatic pieces such as opera, symphony, concerto. For example, Symphony Victorious by Zoltan Almashi or Symphony Unbroken by Oleg Bezborodko, Bucha Lacrimosa by Victoria Poliva, and opera Mothers of Kherson commissioned from Maxim Kolomyets. I can also name other notable works such as Lacrimosa by Alexander Shetinsky, In Requiem, City of Mary by Zoltan Almashi, Comus 2022 for string orchestra by Oleg Bezborodko, a symphony by Dmytro Malý, a symphony by Serhiy Pilitikov titled She Who Dances with the Wind, or Blackout for Switches and Generator Sounds by Borislav Strenko. Poem number 6, Voice of Memory, in memory of war victims by Vladimir Hupa. That was composed earlier, but performed at the City of Mary concert in 2025 at the Lviv Organ Hall. A unique feature of that concert is that it was professionally recorded with the support of Ukrainian radio. Here on this slide and the next slides, you can see the links. If you click those links, you'll be able to listen to all of these pieces that I have just mentioned. And these links will be mentioned on my next slides too. Also, aside from classical music, another category is contemporary art, where the central element is the conceptual idea and various forms and media, such as collage, installation, performance, digital technologies that are combined to express it. Examples include the opera Gaia 24, Opera del Mondo, the instrumental piece for Bandura and Dulcimer titled Mariupol by the composer duo Roman Grigorovich and Ilya Razumeiko. And the third category could be titled Synthesis of Arts, a combination of music and painting, music and poetry, or music and theater to depict military themes. One example is the project Artistic Weapon of Victory of Ukrainian female artists, supported by the Ukrainian Cultural Foundation, presented on August 25, 2024 at the Odessa Regional Philharmonic as a part of the festival 2 Days and 2 Nights of New Music. This festival brought together academic music by Lasla Kaikevich, cantata Signs of Presence, Hanna Kopyka, Feelings, Kira Maidenberg-Todorova, My Beloved, Carmela Tsepkolenko, Reading History, Asmati Chibalashvili, With Faith in Ukraine, and poetry by Lina Kostenka, Oksana Zabushka, Ilya Kiva, Valeria Zhigalina, and Yulia Dmitrenko Despotashvili.
The synthesis of composer Asmati Chibalashvili's music and video projections of abstract acrylic paintings by Odessa artist Vladimir Muhin was reproduced in the audiovisual performance seven basic emotions during war on a dissected piano. The project recreated the seven basic emotions: fear, anger, joy, sadness, sorrow, contempt, disgust, and surprise, as proposed by American psychologist Paul Ekman. This performance was with a slightly different cast, was later shown in Germany and Switzerland. And now I would like to dwell into details regarding some specific works. At the beginning of war, Zlatan Almashi was in a creative crisis, and he received an offer from Oksana Linev to write music. The working title was initially Adagio, but the piece was composed during the destruction of Mariupol, so it became a requiem anthem, City of Mary, and it is a piece for string orchestra. And now I would like to quote, the humanity forgets very quickly. It forgets the facts of terrible crimes, and they must be remembered. Ethics are more important than aesthetics, and culture is in fact the face of the Ukrainian nation. So City of Mary is not just music, it is war, and to some extent the work functions as a weapon. The work lasts 8 to 9 minutes, but Zlatan Almashi wrote it over a long period of time. The premiere took place on the 20th of June 2023 in the city of Graz. The City of Mary has been performed in many cities in Ukraine and around the world. The work gained popularity, and its author became an honored artist of Ukraine. This tune is well recognizable, and actually it is an embodiment of the city that got stuck. And we see it as the wounded sounds of the present, like an echo of the pre-war city. And Zoltan Almashi said the following about the City of Mary. I wrote in the score that is dedicated to Mariupol, and this has already been recorded. If people perform this work, they will see. I'm almost certain that in 10 or 20 years from now, the ordinary Europeans will forget all about it. We, of course, will not forget about it, but they will. But when they open my notes, when they read the score, they will start asking questions. And this is memory, and this is where I see the significance of culture. Another example is Victoria Poleva, who was sitting in her cave apartment. She was writing music to the sounds of the explosions. And on the 29th of August 2022, the world premiere of Victoria's orchestral work, Bucha Lacrimosa, took place during the festival in Bonn. On the 25th of April 2023, the work was performed in Bucha at the Church of St. Andrews, and it was performed by Latoshinsky Choir of the National House of Music during a memorial concert in memory of all victims of Russia's war crimes against Ukraine. And the composer said that this work was written after she saw the photographs of atrocities committed in Bucha. At that moment, she said that she was consumed by despair, and it was simply impossible to go on. It was a contemplation of how the souls of tortured and shot Ukrainians rise to the sky like streams. It is a testimony to the loss of the paradise of humanity, and it will forever remain a terrible wound. Chronologically, the next work appeared in 2022, and that was Lacrimosa by Alexander Shetinsky. On this slide, you can see a link to a recording of the performance made by the Lviv Organ Hall on the Ukrainian Live Classic platform. The piece Lacrimosa was composed in the first weeks of the Russian-Ukrainian War with thoughts of the terrible tragic events on Ukrainian soil, with faith in the victory of humanity and light over barbarism and darkness, says the composer. This work was also commissioned by the Organ Hall, specifically for the musicians of the Luhansk Philharmonic Orchestra, who were relocated from Severodonetsk to Lviv. This work is for 6 instruments: oboe, French horn, 2 trombones, and violin, and organ. The violinists were the first to arrive to Lviv. The organ part was performed by Svetlana Podznicheva. In addition to an interesting combination of instruments, Alexander Shetinsky used the technique of moving musicians around the stage while playing. The sound came not only from the stage but also from different points in the room and even beyond its boundaries. The performance seemed to be performing a kind of a ritual. On the 17th of April 2022, the Organ Hall hosted the premiere of Alexander Shetinsky's Lacrimosa. The official premiere was held on the 16th of May 2022, and the premiere for sponsors was held on the 25th of April. In 2023, Zoltan Almashi wrote new music commissioned by the Organ Hall. His Symphony Number 3, that is titled Victorious, was composed for large symphony orchestra. It consists of 3 parts. The first part is Nocturne, the second one is Morning, another Awakening, and the third part is titled We Will Win. Zoltan Almashi dedicated his work to Luhansk Symphony Orchestra and the Lviv Organ Hall. The composer said, although the dedication seems too long, it was important for me to unite the Luhansk Orchestra and the Lviv Organ Hall in it. We are stitching the country together, East and West together. We are creating a single beautiful Ukraine. The world premiere of the work took place on the 18th of February 2024 in the Organ Hall. It was performed by the Academic Symphony Orchestra of the Luhansk Regional Philharmonic under the baton of Ivan Ostapovich. According to the composer, the final emotional impetus to begin work was his experience in Odessa in September 2024, when the city was attacked by Russian drones and missiles. The composer described his experience as follows. Somewhere before dawn, the attack finally ends, and I tried to get at least a little sleep. But suddenly, at 7 a.m., I woke up again with the sound of someone playing scales on the cello, another awakening. But now from the sounds of a musical instrument, and I was overcome with a feeling of euphoria, joy, and confidence in a victory. And we see this motive in the whole work, and there is this sensation of the joyful victory at the end of this piece. The words of Zoltan Almashi confirm that it is very important to have the memories and to prevent such tragedies from happening in the future. The art, for art's sake, died with the beginning of the Russian-Ukrainian war. Art is once again becoming applied art. It serves the idea of memory as it once again becoming magic. It helps to fight and win. On the 25th of August 2024, on the 33rd anniversary of Ukraine's independence, the Lviv Organ Hall hosted the world premiere of the Symphony Unbroken by Ukrainian composer Oleg Bezborodko. This piece was composed on commission from the directors of the Lviv Organ Hall, Ivan Rostropovich and Tarasdenko. Bezborodka's program music intertwines images of war, the cruel and brazen image of the Russian invasion, as well as dreams of a happy, peaceful future and the energy of freedom and unity that will surely lead Ukraine to victory. This piece consists of 5 parts. The programmatic nature of the work prompted the composer to give each part a symbolic title. The first part is called Dream. The second is Pestilence. The third is Ashes. And the fourth is Freedom. And the fifth is Bird. And there are actually many symbols in this music. The title of the first part is associated with the words Ukrainian aircraft Mriya, which was destroyed in the early days of the full-scale invasion. The composer said the following: when I was thinking about my associations with the independence, the image of this aircraft came to my mind. It is our dream, Mriya, an extremely beautiful, extremely powerful dream. Mriya is also the name of Mykola Lysenko's favorite piano piece based on the folk song Na Solodkim Medu, on Sweet Honey. Bezborodka made an allusion to the music. The composer builds a continuous sound array that does not overwhelm the listener, but rather gently envelops them from all sides. The second part brings contrast to the drama of the symphony. It is called The Pestilence. When the composer was working on the score, he wrote fierce and wild to describe the tempo in this part. That is exactly how it should be played, and this is perhaps the most difficult thing to show evil. The composer used Russian folk songs, in particular Ach, Весенний моей сени, and this melody sounds like a marching song. The choice of the song um, is to show the Russian aggressive militarism, and this aggression is disguised as liberation. The third part of the symphony, Unbroken, is called Ashes. This music conveys emotions of devastation, the images of destroyed Ukrainian cities. It is a small part, the shortest in duration, but very important. The composer said that in this part he also used an allusion to Boris Latoshinsky's piano prelude from Opus 44, which he composed during World War II. At the end of the third part, the composer quotes the theme of this prelude, and it is very similar to Ukrainian folk song. In a way, the entire part, and then even the fourth part, is permeated with this motive. The fourth part is the centerpiece of the symphony, and it is called Freedom. It is kind of an antithesis to the second part. If the third part, devastation, is kind of an intermezzo, then there is a negative second part, which is about evil, and there is a fourth part, which is about freedom. And this part is dedicated to the strength to fight for good. From the point of view of the musical material, these parts should be actually opposite. Actually, this last part could have been the first part, but the composer decided in a completely different way. The fourth part, Freedom, is about the space of freedom, and that is why the melody there is more expansive, with a broad breath and an irregular metric. 2022, immediately after the missile strike on Vinnytsia, where children were killed, Oleg Bezborodko wrote a very tragic piece called Commerce 2022. And this is the piece for strings, oboe, and bass drum in memory of the victims of the Russian invasion. In the fourth part of the symphony, he alludes to commas, but the main motive of broad breathing, of expansion prevails, and almost everywhere there is a symbolic theme, all red vibram in the meadow. at the end it sounds very powerfully. Bird is the fifth part of the symphony, Unbroken, and the idea for this part arose during in the process of composing the whole piece, as the bird is a phoenix that rises from the ashes, a symbol of rebirth and victory of life. Kharkiv composer Dmitro Maley wrote a symphony commissioned by the Lviv Organ Hall while being in Kharkiv under constant attacks from Russian bombs and missiles. This is a symphony about Ukraine and the war in Ukraine, says the composer. Living in Kharkiv is not easy. Almost every day, different parts of the cities are shelled. Many of my friends and comrades and relatives have lost their homes, but I also think about Kherson. Dmitro Maley is actually from Kherson, and I'm thinking about other cities in the country where it seems everything is much worse than it is for me. This music about Ukraine and the war in Ukraine, I couldn't find a more ambitious and topical theme that would suit this symphony genre. It was everything in one piece: cries, tears, prayers, joy, struggle, victory, longing for the dead, says the composer in an interview. The symphony consists of three parts. The first part is the cry of war. It begins with a powerful orchestra, which gradually fades away and then returns in waves. And the first part has the form of sonata allegro. The second part is about life in the city during wartime. It is written in the scherzo genre. Dmitro Maley explains, in this part, I didn't try to imitate the sounds associated with war, but only to emphasize the state of the city and the human soul during this period. In some episodes, thanks to certain rhythmic patterns and modal scales, I make reference to our ancestors, to pre-Christian era. The third part is about the tears of war and confrontation. It consists of a slow part with lamento motus symbolizing weeping and crying, a lively part, and a coda. The first section is structurally somewhat reminiscent of the beginning of the first part of the symphony. In the second section, we hear the confrontation of the different themes, elements of which were encountered in other parts, which in the finale is expressed in the single Kolomyka theme, the apotheosis of the entire symphony. And actually, the work ends with a coda, a picture of a dead field after the battle. It serves as a reminder of the price of victory and honors the memory of the fallen heroes. However, this coda also gives hope at the end. The premiere of Dmitro Maley's symphony took place on the 27th of October 2024, and it was performed by the Academic Symphony Orchestra of the Luhansk Philharmonic under the direction of Ivan Osapovich. Kharkiv, Luhansk, Lviv festival demonstrated the spiritual unity of Ukraine in the most difficult times. Another symphony I would like to draw attention to is the symphony that is called She Who Dances with the Wind. It is dedicated to Ukraine and it was symbolically performed at a concert on the 24th of August 2025. This symphony was commissioned by the Lviv Organ Hall and it was performed by Luhansk Philharmonic Orchestra, conducted by Ivan Ostapovich. The composer believes that the title is the essence of the work, its code, which author sends to people. And the title helps to decipher this code, to apply it to one's own experience and perception. For the author, She Who Dances with the Wind is a collective image of the heroine, strong, proud, free, flying open to the wind. At the moment when Sergei Pilutkov was writing the work, it was an image of Ukraine.
Now, moving on, here you can see composers Ilya Razumeiko and Roman Friharev. They stick to contemporary art. They believe that now it is important to talk about contemporary art, contemporary theater, contemporary opera, because this concerns both cultural diplomacy and the development of society in general. This is perhaps the most important tool for building our future, our nation. Contemporary art, contemporary opera is what distinguishes us from the orcs. Such a culture is impossible over there, but we do it. Young creators are involved not only in composing music, but also in writing librettos, directing, designing sets, and shaping the philosophical and dramatic vision of their opera productions. Their opera, titled Gaia 24, Opera del Mondo, uses music and movement to depict the devastating consequences of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant explosion caused by the Russian occupiers on June 6, 2023, highlighting the environmental impact of this genocidal war. Since Ilya Razumeiko is originally from Zaporizhia, the creators felt a responsibility to bring the story of the Kakhovka tragedy to Europe and the world. They aim to present it not only as a Ukrainian issue, but as a problem that concerns all Europeans. The opera reflects on ecological catastrophe and war through the themes of earth and water. It involves Gaia, the earth goddess from Greek mythology, and draws on the modern interpretation by French philosopher and anthropologist Bruno Latour, who, a month before his death in 2022, published a text titled "Is the Soil of Europe Changing Under Our Feet?" In it, he describes the relationship between humans and nature as a state of war. This image helped the composers to communicate the realities of the Russian-Ukrainian war to audiences less familiar with the conflict, since the topic is something that allows you to connect local tragedy to a global scale. The title, Opera del Mondo, references Aldo Rosso's floating theater installation Teatro del Mondo, created for the 1980 Venice Biennale. Since the ecocide caused by this war remains insufficiently recognized by the international community, the opera serves as a call for vigilance, warning that humanity stands on the brink of a global disaster. The opera lasts about 90 minutes and combines transforming landscapes, the human body, and the theater stage into an open musical theatrical ritual. It consists of 3 acts or parts that follow one another seamlessly, without breaks. The first part, titled Sons of Mother Earth, when the earth gives a generous harvest, we must wait for a great war to come, features ethnic music from peoples around the world. The second part, Cabaret Metastasis. When the seas dry up, rivers change their course, and forests become uninhabitable due to radiation. The empire will soon fail. Includes many scenes emphasizing the naked human body emotion. The third part, Dances for Mother Earth. When the end of the world comes, the earth and the sky merge into a single whole. Blends diverse musical genre, from rap to folk song. The composers explain the opera is based on extreme contrasts. It is a study of the voice, a study of the body, a study of the land. The musical language in the opera reflects the land of the Russian-Ukrainian war. There are many musical languages, religions, traditions on our planet, so it's easier to say what kinds of music are not in the opera. Apparently, there is no symphonic music in its classical form and sound, but even that transformed is present. There is also death metal, pop, rap, operetta, noise, and there is Ukrainian song, there is Agnus Dei. In the first part, based on ancient intonations, there are many chants accompanied by magical ritual dances. Then, the musical and choreographic realm expands through collages with meaningful accents, and electronic music elements are introduced, especially in the apocalyptic, culminating moments. The opera also incorporates documentary video shot on Khortytsa Island in October 2023, which the authors used to broaden the theatrical imagination and move it into a multimedia domain. There is a performance with a piano floating in water and another with cracks in the ground. In an interview with Ksenia Bilash for Left Bank, the composers described their concept in the following way. For us, every opera is a research, and the expedition is a part of this research, part of the multimedia language that we use in the performance to expand the stage space. In modern theater, we don't need narrow-profile artists who don't understand what and why they're doing it. We don't need session musicians who play by notes without knowing the plot or the people around them. We need universal artists, and each of our artists should be a co-creator of this opera. There are 12 people on stage, us included. The opera premiered on May 10, 2024 at the International Center for Culture and Arts on the Alley of the Heroes of the Heavenly Hundred. It was then performed at the May International Festival of Opera, Music and Theatre in Rotterdam, followed by a presentation in Vienna in September. On October 26, it was featured as a part of the 60th International Art Exhibition of the Venice Biennale. In November 2025, the opera is scheduled to be again staged in Kiev. And I would like to conclude my presentation by highlighting an opera commissioned by the New York Metropolitan Opera, titled Mothers of Kherson. And this powerful musical work was created through the collaboration of Ukrainian composer Maxim Kolomiets, Canadian conductor of Ukrainian descent Kyrillin Wilson, and Peter Galp, general manager of the Metropolitan Opera, one of the world's leading centers of musical culture. All of them contributed to creating Mothers of Kherson. Mothers of Kherson tells the harrowing story of the illegal deportation of Ukrainian children to Russia and of the brave mothers who risked everything to bring back their children and rescue them. The opera is based on the true story of two mothers from Kherson whose daughters were invited to a so-called summer camp in occupied Crimea and never returned. It was later revealed that the children had been kidnapped. With the support of their Save Ukraine, the women embarked on a dangerous journey across Ukraine, Poland, Belarus, and Russia to bring their daughters home. Although the opera is based in true story, the characters are portrayed as generalized heroines. Why is the leading opera house in the US commissioning a work about the abduction of Ukrainian children? Metropolitan Opera director Peter Galp believes that the art can sometimes speak louder than the news. That's why they decided to commission a new opera by a Ukrainian composer, a piece that would tell the world about the mass abduction of Ukrainian children by Russians. The premiere is scheduled for October 2026 at the Polish National Opera. It will then be performed at the Metropolitan Opera in New York during 2027-2028 season, conducted by Kyrillin Wilson. This project is deeply personal for her. She emphasizes the importance of raising awareness about organizations that work to return abducted Ukrainian children. She also says supporting Ukraine should be the norm. Everyone should act this way. We should all do everything we can for Ukraine. Ukrainians must know they are not alone. Music can be a powerful signal of support if the repertoire is chosen with care. Instead of a conclusion, let us recall a quote often attributed to Winston Churchill during the Second World War. When asked to cut arts funding to support the military effort, he allegedly replied, "Then what are we fighting for?" Ukraine is fighting not only for survival, but for the future too. Ukrainian composers continue to create quality music. Ukrainian musicians perform even during wartime. The government supports arts initiatives. Everyone involved in art sphere wants Ukrainian culture to be visible globally and heard around the world. This is it from my side. Thank you for your attention. Thank you so much, Andrii, for such informative and interesting presentation with amazing examples. I personally learned so much, and thank you for sharing this with us today. Thank you for breaking it down for us. It is such a pleasure to hear Asmati Chabalashvili because she also this year is a part of our cohort. You also have mentioned Razumeiko and Hurry Hurriv about their lullaby for Mariupol, specifically that piece. There was a very interesting article that was written by Irina Tukova, our other scholar. You know, it is so nice that we're creating this community to share opinions and that all of these ideas are being nurtured within this community. Thank you so much, Andrii, that all of it is intertwined. I don't know, maybe you have some comments or questions. Tatiana, go ahead.
Дякую, пані Світлано.
Thank you so much, Svetlana. Andrii.
Я вдячна вам за цю
Well,
неймовірну презентацію. Це практично нічого не сказати.
saying thank you will not convey how
Незважаючи на
grateful
моє
I am.
прізвище,
You know,
музиків є таким
despite my
експертом,
last
як
name,
музики,
Muzika,
але
which means
сьогодні
music,
щось
I'm not an
неймовірної
expert in the
інформації
field
мені
of music,
дізналася
but nevertheless,
нової. Я вам дуже
we
дякую за
learned
надзвичайно
so
такий
much
глибокий
new things
аналіз,
today. So thank you so much for
за
such an
представлення
in-depth
таких музичних
analysis.
шедеврів.
Thank you
Надіюся,
so
дуже
much for
чудово.
sharing
І
information
знаєте,
about
десь в такому
such
цьому ключі
masterpieces
я
with us.
подумала, коли
And you know,
слухала вас, що
while
напевно
listening to
зараз
your
мені
speech,
співає
I was
Чернов,
thinking
який
about
свого часу
Mstislav
сказав, що
Chernov, who back
він
in the
радше
day
хотів, щоб його
said
фільм про
that
Західні Маріуполь
he
ніколи не вийшов, знаєте, в широкий
would
прокат. Я
rather
думаю,
want
що
the
думали ці
world
всі
not
композитори,
see
які
his
творили
movie
симфонії,
titled
які
20
робили
Days in
опери.
Mariupol. You know,
Напевно, вони теж би мали таке
what
саме
were these
побажання. Радше
composers
цих творів,
thinking
цих таких
about who were
шедеврів
creating
музичних
these pieces?
ніколи
You
б не
know,
було.
probably they never
Але ще
wanted
раз
it to see the
дякую вам
world.
за потрібну роботу. Мені було
But
дуже цікаво теж слухати
nevertheless,
про
thank you
Дмитра
so much. It
Малого,
was
який
such a pleasure
проходить
to find out
24
about
року, дійсно про матері
Dmytro
Херсону.
Malý,
Теж дуже
about the
потрібні
mothers of
надзвичайно потрібні речі.
Kherson.
І я маю до вас такі
These
два
pieces are very much needed.
запитання.
And I
Чи
have
мали
two
ви,
quick
можливо,
questions for you.
якусь нагоду, можливість
Did you
спілкуватися з кимось
probably
авторів
have
цих
an
творів, про які ви
opportunity
сьогодні
to
говорили?
communicate
І
with the
теж,
creators
чи
of these pieces
якимось,
that you
яким
have
чином
brought
ви
up today?
презентуєте результати своїх
And
досліджень
how
за
are
кордоном?
you
Бо, як на
presenting
мене,
the results of your
те, про
research
що ви сьогодні
abroad?
згадали, навіть такі
Because what
знімати
you have
з
covered
Херсону, або
today,
теж
for
дуже
example,
цікаво,
Mothers of
знаєте, Козлов,
Kherson,
так танцює з
or
вітром,
by the way,
така
another very
неймовірна
interesting, She Who
така
Dances
нашої
with the
України,
Wind,
знаєте, яка
you know, it
повстає
also such an
молодиця.
amazing
Тобто є питання,
association
чи
with
мали ви можливість
Ukraine, like a
спілкуватися з
phoenix
авторами, перше. І
rising from
друге,
the ashes.
яким чином
So,
ви
first
презентуєте
question,
результати
could you
своїх
talk to the
досліджень за
creators of these
кордоном?
pieces? And
Бо
my
я
second
вважаю, що
question,
вони
how do you
насправді
present the
вартують
results
цього.
of your
Дуже вам
research
дякую ще
abroad?
раз.
Because I believe that it should be made global. Thank you once again.
Дякую вам за запитання.
Thank you so much for your questions.
Чесно кажучи, я, звичайно,
Well, to be frank,
із авторами я так наживо не спілкувався, хоча,
I
звичайно,
did not
читав
directly
також
talk to
їхні
the creators,
інтерв'ю, що вони з цього
even though I
приводять.
did
Ну,
read
де
their
вони
interviews
розповідають
to find out what do they
версії, де
think
вони
and where
розповідають
they
про
share
задумку
with the
цих
mass
творів,
media about the
які
ideas behind these
які
pieces
посили вкладали в ці твори,
and
тобто,
what kind
що
of a message they
що
were
вони
trying to
вкладали в
embed
ці
into
твори.
these works,
Тобто
what they were trying to instill
їхнє
in it.
бачення, їхнє бачення цих от музичних творів.
How they
Ось,
see these pieces, basically.
Яке друге запитання?
What was your second
Чи
question? I'm
була у вас
sorry.
якась нагода презентувати результати своїх
Could you
досліджень десь за
present the
межами
results
України?
of your research outside of Ukraine? Thank you. Thank you.
Поки що я ще не презентував.
Well, I have not yet
Ну, це хіба що тільки
presented it abroad,
навесні,
outside of Ukraine.
коли
Well,
це ж
maybe though in
відбувалося на
spring.
воркшопі, можливо, я частково висвітлював
During a
деякі
workshop, I
композитори,
probably
де я
partially
тільки
mentioned
щодо
some of the
таких сказав.
composers that I
Це
also
було
mentioned
одночасно
today.
і про тандем
I mentioned the duo of Roman Grigoryv and Ilya Razumeiko,
там іще про декілька творів, які також
and a few more pieces
розказував
that
навесні.
I talked about in spring during the workshop. Yeah, well, I have again mentioned them just now. But of course, I also mentioned those works that I have not presented earlier on. that probably were even composed later on chronologically. For example, Lech Bezborodko's symphony. You know, I could not omit it. So I had to also include it into the list of the pieces that I talked about. Well, and now we must listen to every single piece and view the videos. I did not even know, I had no clue that we had so many valuable artistic pieces. Thank you so much and all the best in your research. And I'd like to remind you that Andrii has shared all of the links and you can find them in the chat box. Nadia? Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me. I'd like to thank you, Andrii, for very informative and interesting presentation. I would like to comment and mention the difference in ethical position between the leadership of Metropolitan Opera and what is happening in the UK. When Anna Trapka is performing there, and I have been following some publications, the mass media, you know, part of the music scholars are saying that this is really cool. Others are saying that she is not as amazing as she used to be in the past. And that such performers should not be allowed to even sing on the stage. But the head of the Royal Opera is saying that art is beyond politics. That is why they are presenting whatever that they are presenting. I believe that our composers, it is very, very good that information about them is being disseminated, that all of this is recorded, that we don't only have scores, but that we also have recordings. And maybe one day they will be performed at the best stages globally. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for this commentary, Nadia and Oksana. The floor is yours. Unfortunately, people are not learning from the history, and people don't want to realize that art cannot be beyond politics. And I believe that Andrii today exemplified it in a brilliant way. Thank you so much for your presentation, because, you know, it was both very aesthetically fulfilling as well as knowledge fulfilling, since your research yet again underscores how art can communicate in a different, emotionally deep language and probably even get it through to the people who cannot hear the rational voices. Well, at least I'd like to believe that. My question is the following. You have highlighted a few times that certain pieces were commissioned. Others were composed, on the contrary, when the creators were inspired by some experience. As a scholar, you personally, do you see any difference in this from the ethical point of view between the commissioned pieces and the ones that were created out of creator's own will? And the second question, you have also showed us that there are so many comments about what has happened. The creators are reflecting on occupation, children losing their mothers, or Mariupol tragedy, etc. But are there any pieces that would reflect some battle-related motives, you know, kind of an art that would be inspiring a fighter for the battle, you know, kind of more like propaganda touch to them? But please be brief, because there's one more question, Andrii. Thank you so much. Thank you for this question. Well, speaking about the first question, of course, those pieces that were commissioned, as well as self-reflection by the composers, well,
Мені здається, що
It seems to me
все було якось так дуже
that
проникливо, дуже щиро, і
it all
я
was
би не
very
сказав, що це,
sincere,
те,
very
що напевно,
honest.
що воно було
And I
написано
wouldn't say that the ones that were
як,
commissioned
ну так, що автори
are,
не,
you know, that the creators of the commissioned
як
pieces,
сказати,
well, how do I put it?
теж
That they,
відчував, що якось не ставився до
that
цього
the
якось
creators
таких власних рефлексій. Мені здається,
were not
що в
treating
одному
it as a
випадку
self-reflection.
все-таки
It seems to me that in both cases, there was this sincerity.
що тут отак, а там от отак. От все-таки мені здається,
It
що
wasn't like, oh, if it's
це
commissioned, we do it
все-таки
one way. If it's my
співпадало
self-reflection,
із
I'm going to do it the
баченням
other way.
автора.
I think whatever that was commissioned oftentimes coincided with the author's perception, and it allowed the composer to meet their internal need, to implement the idea, this internal self-reflection. So I think that it is related in this case.
Мені здається, що так.
Well,
Ось,
that's at least my view regarding this.
А нагадайте, друге питання, яке було?
And could you please remind me about the latter question?
Чи є серед сучасних творів якісь такі, які би радше відображали
Are there
баталістичні
any
теми,
modern
надихали
works
солдата
that
до бою?
would be of inspiration to the soldiers, not the traumatic experience, but something that would inspire
Мгм.
people on the
Ну,
battlefield?
серед таких я так зразу не скажу, мабуть.
Well,
Ось,
from the top of my
ну,
head, I cannot recall
ну,
anything
те,
in
що
particular.
стосується, да, не траплялись поки що наразі
Well,
мені такі
at
твори. В
least I
основному це
didn't come
рефлексійні
across
перегляди
such
подій.
pieces.
Перегляди
Mostly,
подій. Зокрема,
those
саме
are
от
the
композитора,
reflections
тому
on
воно
the
так
events
так
that
от
took place
настільки в них
in
це
the
все проникло
lives
і
of
вийшло.
the composers
Тому що
themselves.
вони самі
That's
ці
why their
перегляди.
experience and these pieces are so piercing, because
Дуже
that
дякую.
is
Дякую.
the
І останнє
personal
питання,
story.
Андрію, дуже
Thank you very
коротко
much.
від
And
пані
Andrii,
Ірини
just a
Литвин.
quick
Чи
question
можемо
from
говорити
Irina
про появу
Litvin.
нового напряму чи стилю в
May we
академічній
speak
музиці,
about
пов'язаний
the
саме з
new
воєнною
style
тематикою?
or a new stream in academic music that is related to the war themes?
Ну, тут, власне, можна сказати, що тематика, звичайно, нова.
Well, I'd say
Але,
that this
але стиль,
stream
жанри,
is
звичайно,
new, but
використовуються
the style and the
класичні
genres
жанри.
that are
Ось,
used,
але
those are the
нова
classical
саме тематика.
ones. The themes, yes, that is a new theme.
От, і я думаю, що в цьому якраз от, новизна.
And I believe that that is a
Зрозуміло. Дуже
novelty.
дякуємо, Андрію, ще раз за блискучу
All
доповідь. І
right.
спасибі
Thank you
вам
very
за
much,
те,
Andrii,
що
for
ви
your
сьогодні з нами.
insightful and brilliant presentation. Thank you for being with us
А ми
today.
Дякую.